The story kicks off with this dude, Ed Rothstaylor, getting absolutely wrecked by his own high-ranking noble family. We see him chilling in this super fancy, chandelier-lit room, but his life as the literal king of the academy is straight up over. They've packed up all his stuff into a couple of suitcases because he's officially being disowned and scrubbed from the family register. Why? Because the guy messed up on a monumental level. He committed the ultimate sin of running his mouth with unprudent profanity right in front of the Honorable Princess Fenia, and then he wrongfully meddled in the holy Silvenia Academy's entrance exams. To top it all off, he completely dragged his family's name through the mud out of pure blinding jealousy. Cut to outside, and he's sitting there looking miserable next to his luggage while the other academy students are totally gossiping about him. They're whispering about how they don't have to walk on eggshells around him anymore since he got disowned and emptied out his dorm room. They're literally calling him a filthy noble and saying it's his own fault for rigging the exam, figuring they definitely won't see him next semester. But bro, here's where the crazy plot twist drops. The guy currently stuck inside Ed's body is gripping his hair, crying, and screaming internally, "The arrogant Ed Rothstaylor you people are talking about isn't me!" Turns out, our main guy got straight up isekai'd into his favorite video game, a magic school game called The Failed Swordsman of Silvenia, which literally won Best Game of the Year. Normally in these webtoon setups, you get to possess a genius chi-ball heir, or some badass young clan master, or maybe even an SSS rank hunter who totally breaks the rules. But nah, not him. Out of all the epic possibilities, he ended up in the body of Ed Rothstaylor, a third-rate trampy villain who gets booted from the dorms right at the beginning of the early scenarios. Our guy starts throwing a massive fit, crying that it's totally unfair because he's always lived a simple, frugal life without any greed in the real world. Meanwhile, the onlookers are just glaring at him in absolute disgust, calling him a shameless scumbag for claiming he's frugal and simple after everything he pulled. He pulls out this ornate hand mirror and boom, a stat window pops up. Bro, his stats are absolute unfiltered garbage. As a 17-year-old male human in his second year, he's rocking stamina 3, intellect 4, talent 7, willpower 7, and luck 6, with 0 achievements. He complains that even a basic farmer NPC has a stamina of 5, and for a dude in the magic faculty, his intellect is literally crawling on the floor. He barely even remembers Ed from his playthroughs of the game until it suddenly hits him. Ed was that random bum begging on the streets in the ending credits rolling alongside a massive cast list. The dude had been tossed onto the streets with 0 real-world survival skills, so getting the beggar ending was basically inevitable. Completely determined not to let that be his actual ending, he decides he's gonna make it no matter what. He drags his heavy brown suitcase deep into the undeveloped forest on the massive Arkan Mountains, where Silvenia Academy is located, just trying to dodge the prying eyes of all the other students. After walking for half a day, he takes a breather and realizes that while he was officially disowned, he hasn't actually been expelled from the school yet. Since graduating from Silvenia guarantees a super secure and awesome future, his master plan is to just keep his head down, graduate quietly, and use his massive intel as a 5-time dedicated player of the game to survive. The only massive roadblock is the crazy high tuition fees. He desperately needs to figure out how to score a scholarship for the next semester, though looking at his trash stats, he figures he'll be lucky just to not flunk out entirely. But right now, he has to worry about the immediate basics: food, clothing, and shelter. He pops open his luggage to see what he can use to avoid becoming a total bum over the next week. All he's got are some showy clothes, an ornamental cup, and a ceremonial dagger, none of which give him any stat boosts since he can't show his face back at the dorm, and his terrible reputation makes getting a normal job impossible. He has no choice but to set up camp near a stream in the woods. He tries using some magic, shouting "Windblade" to chop down some trees for firewood. But after cutting just 15 tree trunks, he's completely gassed and starving, realizing his stamina stat is an absolute joke. By day 3, after starving for a day and violently throwing up for 2, he gets incredibly desperate. He remembers his grandpa talking about surviving on tree bark back in the day during the barley hump, so he uses his ignition magic to light a fire and cook some bark. It actually ends up looking like chicken breast, but the literal second he eats it, he violently throws up again. Lesh. He officially decides right then and there that wood should only be used for building houses, definitely not eating. Using his bare hands, he puts in some serious physical labor to build a super crude A-frame shelter out of the wood and leaves. Then suddenly, a system message pops up out of nowhere saying, "Your creation is complete," and his crafting proficiency levels up. He crafted a basic wood shelter, a crude and shabby resting spot with a 3-star crafting difficulty. Turns out, checking his life skills window shows he's a novice craftsman with level 4 handiness, meaning he's way more talented with his bare hands than he is with magic. Driven totally mad by his growling stomach, he uses that clutch handiness to strap his ceremonial dagger to a well-sharpened tree trunk, successfully crafting a simple harpoon. Screaming that he desperately needs to get something proper to eat, he dives straight into the stream and actually manages to spear a fat fish. He immediately uses his ignition magic to cook the fish right over an open fire and tries to absolutely devour it like a wild animal. He figures if he just holds out in the woods for a week until school starts, he can coast through without much trouble. But dude, right when he thinks he's finally safe, he gets totally interrupted. A beautiful blonde girl in a white dress appears right in front of him. It's Princess Fenia, the main character of the game and the exact person who got him kicked out in the first place. He has a quick flashback of Ed on his knees while Princess Fenia glares down at him in pure disgust, telling him he doesn't have the slightest sign of remorse and that he should completely disappear from the academy. Back in the present, Princess Fenia is glaring right at him and coldly asks why he hasn't left the place yet. We get a flashback reminding us exactly why Ed is in this mess, showing how he originally appeared as a villain the moment the game started. He used his noble status to hit on the main character's childhood friend, only to end up getting punished. After getting punished for that, his vengeful heart led him to maliciously adjust the main character's entrance exam for Silvenia Academy. However, he was instantly caught by Fenia alias Kloll, the third princess of the Kloll Empire, who had come to take the exam while hiding her identity. Because Fenia activated her insight skill, which perfectly detects lies and conspiracies, all of Ed's lies were exposed, leading to him being chased out of the dorms and making him the most hated person at the academy. Snapping back to the present, Princess Fenia glares at Ed in the forest and demands to know what he is doing there, threatening to personally go to the academic department and request his full expulsion for committing dishonorable acts as a student and for setting up a fellow student to block their path to a better future. While she is giving him this intense speech, Ed is internally freaking out because the precious food he finally got after starving for 3 days is literally burning on the fire behind him, and he furiously thinks to himself that he expected her to keep her speech short. Knowing this is a massive life crisis because she actually has the power to get him expelled, Ed notices the sun is setting and points out that royalty is usually guarded by heavily armed soldiers, so it is super strange for a noble princess to come to an isolated forest alone. Fenia immediately gets defensive, warning him that he will regret it if he is trying to threaten her just because she does not have escorts. But Ed simply bows slightly and says he is just trying to thank the princess. The moment he says this, Fenia's insight skill activates, and the system confirms to her that it is the absolute truth, and there are no lies within his words, which leaves her completely shocked. The reason it is the actual truth is that Ed knows his family uses their name to exploit citizens and conduct human experiments for eternal life research, meaning they are destined to be destroyed and all the people of the family will be imprisoned or executed. Because he was disowned, sitting cold and hungry in the forest is actually a massive win for him because it is better than dying. So in the long run, it is rather good. Knowing he has to convince Fenia using only the truth or face a game over via expulsion, he figures out from the timeline of it being a week before school starts and her simple clothing that she is currently completing Professor Glast's class placement test, which involves finding hidden magic beads in the forest. Ed tells her that as a noble princess, she is obviously aiming for the best class, Class A, and when she accuses him of trying to flatter her before she expels him, he boldly declares that without his help, she will never be able to enter Class A. He wagers his entire future by telling her that if his words are a lie, she can have him expelled, and then instructs her to go to the lake at the southeast of the forest where she will find a small grassy island with a giant tree in the middle called Marilda's guardian tree, promising she will find the present he left there. Seeing his absolute confidence, Fenia realizes the Ed from 3 days ago was a liar and a charlatan, but the guy standing in front of her now is entirely different. The scene then shifts to the end of the class placement test, where Magic Professor Glast tells the students to take out their beads and bluntly tells them all they are starting in Class F. Glast explains that the real intent of the test was not just to find any bead, but to find beads specifically lacking in magic power to make Class A. Glast announces that only 3 students found those beads, specifically naming Zix and Loratel, before adding that the one student who found the hidden bead at the guardian tree of Marilda with unusually high magic power will be placed at the absolute top of the class. Back in the woods, Ed realizes his fish is completely burned, and he is too weak to use a spear anymore. So he uses his dagger to craft a crude fishing rod by cutting twigs from a tree trunk, using silk thread from fabric, and replacing the needle with a small nail, noting that the crafting difficulty makes the durability low, and it hard to tell if a fish bites. Meanwhile, the story reveals that since Fenia was young, she saw through flattery and sophistry, sharpening her insight into an inescapable innate skill, meaning Ed had absolutely no choice but to give her authentic information. However, Ed also knew that if Fenia actually succeeded in the placement test, instead of falling to Class F, her massive influence over the early scenario would cause the entire original storyline of the game to collapse, rendering all of his meta-knowledge useless and ultimately ruining his chances of survival. Luckily, the future does not change, and the top spot in the class goes to the sleepy genius Lucy Merrill instead of Fenia. Standing in front of the glowing bead at the tree, Fenia realizes Ed did not lie about the bead being there, but she also understands it was not a real present. Fenia hid her identity specifically because she was embarrassed of special treatment and wanted to prove herself on her own merits. Ed knew her perfectly. He knew she would recognize the bead offered the best test results, but would strictly refuse to take it because the title she would eventually earn, the Princess of Love, is not a simple stat, but a title gained only by walking a righteous path. By throwing that bait and giving her the exact location of a cheat item he knew her pride would not let her use, Ed ensured she failed to enter Class A, meaning his bold statement was technically the complete truth, and she had absolutely no justification to expel him, which causes her to punch a wall in frustration and vow to keep her eyes on it. After successfully catching a fish with his new rod, the story skips forward, showing Ed huffing and sprinting across the dirt paths from early in the morning just to arrive at school on time. Inside the grand hall at Silvenia Academy, the announcer welcomes the students to the new semester and tells them to enjoy the prepared food, while Ed sits at a massive banquet table slicing into a thick steak with perfect manners, thinking to himself that this feast is his reward for being the victor and that he just wants to graduate without any ambitions. The other students whisper among themselves, disgusted that the disgraced noble had the nerve to show up at the opening ceremony and wondering if he really plans to keep attending, though a group of girls notice he feels a bit different. One of the girls watches Ed from a distance, acknowledging that he feels like a completely different person and silently hoping that nothing happens. On the very first day of school for the new semester, and everyone is excited to see the improved students and the work done by the Silvenia Academic Society. But reality hits hard when Ed is standing outside the dean's office looking completely doomed because he was almost expelled. He admits he totally did not expect Fenia to snitch on him to the dean. However, the cranky old dean just has a smile on his face, making Ed realize she did not actually say anything bad. Ed wipes his sweat in relief that he barely managed to avoid getting kicked out and tells himself to be super careful so the story does not stray from the original plot. Out in the woods, Ed is hanging with a cute white rabbit and checks his combat stats. Seeing he is a novice fighter specializing in the bow, he figures that combining his life skills honed for survival and the magic training appropriate for a magic student means the bow is the absolute best weapon for him. He plans to make good quality arrows as his life skills level up so he can cast spirit or magic formulas onto them. But then he gets bummed out, remembering that spirit formulas are completely outside the realm of his talent. Suddenly, Janica Failover pops into the story, and she is a second-year student who is the top of her class and a genius spirit sorcerer. She walks right up to Ed while he is fishing and cheerfully asks if he is the amusing guy Marilda was talking about, confirming his name is Ed Rothstaylor and telling him he can just call her Janica since they are in the same year. Ed is totally spooked and wonders when she got all the way out there, but Janica just asks if he is surprised because she already knows about it. She explains that the forest is the territory of a high-ranking spirit named Marilda, who told her a lot about him, leaving Ed sweating as he realizes the master of the forest snitched on him. Ed immediately panics and thinks of himself as an unwanted visitor because he killed a lot of animals and cut down so many trees, but Janica tells him not to sweat the small stuff because it is just the natural order for forest creatures to catch and eat each other. She adds that Marilda does not get bothered by that kind of thing either, which makes Ed think it is super unexpected that a huge wild wolf has such a tender heart. Janica giggles and calls it cute and adorable, then holds out her glowing hands, explaining she signed a contract with the spirit yesterday, the moment she saw him, and asks Ed if he wants to try touching it. Ed realizes it is a spirit contract and knows if he wants to be friends with Janica, he just needs to chime in. But instead he plays it super cold, telling her he does not know what she means and that he does not, or rather cannot see spirits. Janica looks completely shocked that he cannot see them, and Ed just hits her with a flat yep before walking away. He justifies blowing her off by reminding himself that only by following the original storyline can he gain an informational advantage. So someone like Janica, who holds massive importance in the story, is someone he must absolutely never get close to. Left behind with the giant spirit wolf Marilda, Janica agrees with the wolf that Ed is a really fascinating guy, but she pouts and admits she thinks he really cannot see the spirit and wonders who he even is. She flops against the wolf, complaining that she tried so hard to be kind to him, but he just answered with, yep, though she brushes it off, saying it is not like they will never see each other again, so she can just find out more about him later. The grind for Ed is insane though, because the map shows the distance between his shelter and the student area is not close at all, meaning he has to leave at dawn and run full speed just to barely make it in time. He figures just commuting to school is a ridiculous task that increases his stats. But to win the scholarship, he has to study diligently, which means writing on a stone slab with a burned stick and borrowing books from the library. On his way home, he washes his sweaty clothes for daily wear and hopes they dry by tomorrow morning. But he is still not done, because he has to check his firewood, drinking water, and his weirdly fishy beef jerky for tomorrow's lunch, leaving him with only 4 hours to sleep. But that is not even what bothers him the most, because he suddenly turns and yells out to ask how long Janica is going to keep following him. Janica pops out totally flustered, asking if he knew, and Ed says it would be stranger if he did not know. He tries to scare her off by asking if she knows he is Ed Rothstaylor, the worst hooligan to exist, and demands why she keeps hanging around him. Janica just gives him a sweet smile and says that is just other people's judgment of him, and she does not even know him yet. Ed knows her character is naive and dumb on the outside, but she's really independent-minded and is actually the final boss of Act 1, and since she is the only character who smiles at the villain Rothstaylor, he cannot bring himself to respond with a refreshing smile, knowing what is in store for her. He decides to be a complete scumbag, telling her he did not want to go this far. But since destiny brought them together, he asks her for a favor, specifically begging her to give him some money because he is a mess who got disowned by his family and is in a pinch. He shamelessly says that is what friends are for, and he is only borrowing it, asking how much she has. This is a brutal move, because even though Janica gets a scholarship every year for being top of the class, it does not just mean she is excellent. She actually has a super poor background as the daughter of a small ranch and cannot enroll without that money, making it her biggest weakness. This move successfully cuts her out of his hair. 3 days later, Ed is walking with a dead rabbit, feeling bad about how he treated her, but insisting he does not want to get entangled with important characters anymore, so the story does not stray. When he gets back to his shelter, he gets the shock of his life, because Lucy Makel is fast asleep right there in his Mountain Valley camp. Lucy is an even heavier presence than Janica, respected by classmates and professors as the rare genius and most powerful character in the whole story. She wakes up stretching with a massive yawn, and Ed panics, trying to remember the original storyline while she complains that he is so loud she cannot sleep. Ed stammers, asking what he did, but Lucy clarifies she is not talking about him. She is talking about the wolf over there that is as big as a house. Ed turns around terrified as the massive glowing blue spirit wolf Marilda appears right behind him. Lucy completely drops a bomb on him by saying the wolf keeps talking to him, begging him to someday save Janica at all costs. Ed is sweating bullets, but he forces himself to play dumb, thinking to himself that even if she says that, he has to pretend. So he tells her he cannot see anything at all. Internally, Ed is super frustrated because he thought he had finally gotten rid of Janica, and now he is staring at another huge problem, wondering why the heck Lucy is sleeping in his raggedy camp of all places. He completely loses his cool and yells at her that he has told her what he needed to and begs her not to go back to sleep, but it is no use. We see that Lucy uses space magic to teleport her tiny body from place to place, which makes her territory as wide as a street cat's, meaning she can nap anywhere she wants, like the clock tower or roofs with good lighting. Unfortunately for Ed, his camp in the northern forest of Arkan Island might be remote to others, but for Lucy, it has cool wind and the relaxing sound of the river, making it the absolute perfect spot for her to skip class and take a nap. Ed groans, realizing he made his bed, so now he has to lie in it, and by the next day, he knows he desperately needs a method to get rid of her. He watches in disbelief as she uses multicasting with 5 or 6 different high-level spells just to fly into his camp and crash into a pile of his firewood to sleep. And he knows that if this monster continues staying here, it is just a matter of time before the original storyline is completely ruined. Ed tries to focus on his survival, completing the production of a snare out of construction rope and resilient wood to catch small animals, which increases his proficiency. While he is working, Lucy eyes his food, and he sternly warns her not to eat it, but she blatantly ignores him, taking a bite of the beef jerky and happily noting what an interesting flavor it has. Ed realizes she absolutely will not listen to reason, and the fact that she has come here twice means she is definitely going to keep coming back. He racks his brain because out of all the countless strategy posts he has read in the past, there was absolutely no method to defeat Lucy, but then he suddenly remembers a tiny sentence in the setup guide that everyone always skips. He smirks to himself, recalling that the lore states Lucy runs away every single day from the Theophilus Hall maids who try to take care of her like a mother. Putting his genius plan into action, Ed acts all surprised and tells Lucy that while he was coming to camp, he saw the Theophilus Hall maids looking for her. Lucy completely panics, stutters that she suddenly remembered something urgent she has to do, and rockets out of the forest screaming that she will catch up with him later, leaving Ed to grab his axe and rope to peacefully get back to work. However, Ed admits he was totally complacent in thinking this would not lead to any butterfly effects, and his peaceful time is interrupted by a system quest popping up for joint combat training. He explains that this training is a mock one-on-one combat exercise, where the alchemy students are restricted from using overly strong potions or spirit formulas, the grades are completely mixed, and the match list is completely randomized into one-on-one battles. The craziest part is that all the heavy hitters from the scenarios participate in this class, including the benevolent Princess Fenia, the spirit sorcerer Janica, the golden daughter Lortel, wicked Clebius, and slothful Lucy. But Ed notes that the most important person there is the actual protagonist of the world, the failed swordsman named Taylor. The matches kick off, and Ed barely pays attention because he already knows the results, noting that the winners were all first years just like Taylor, except for exactly one person. Suddenly, Janica Faylover runs up to him looking super happy, which absolutely baffles Ed, because he cannot believe she's acting like a loyal dog instead of a cat like Lucy, especially after he intentionally put her through the pathetic experience of begging her for money. She excitedly tells him the list of matches is out, and Ed tries to brush her off by saying he is not really interested, but she asks why he isn't curious about his own match. This makes Ed freeze in sheer panic, realizing he actually has to fight, and when he checks the board, he sees he is matched up against Princess Fenia Elias, which makes him sweat buckets because the original Ed Rothstaylor was supposed to be expelled by now. Before he can process his doom, the announcer calls for the next duel to head to the waiting room and calls out Lucy Merrill and Taylor McClure. Ed watches Taylor step up to the arena and feels a deep connection to him because he lived as Taylor for several lifetimes through the game, enduring miserable bad endings and epic true endings, knowing Taylor's path is nothing but arduous and difficult trials. Even though Ed decided to only care about his own survival, he cannot help but mentally cheer for Taylor. But things immediately go off script when the announcer repeats the call for Lucy because she is nowhere to be found, and Ed realizes with horror that she is asleep. Ed shakes Lucy awake by her cheek, demanding she get up because it is her turn. Lucy complains and whines, but knowing this match is an unbelievably important episode that inspires Taylor to pick up the sword for the first time, so Ed resorts to bribing her, and she sleepily asks if he has any more of that beef jerky from last time. Ed angrily tells her to go finish her duel first, and she finally drags herself to the arena while yawning. The battle between the top of the class Lucy and the protagonist Taylor begins, and Ed anticipates the legendary scene he remembers from the game. He recalls that Taylor, who has never held a sword, is supposed to charge forward with the first swing of his sword and miraculously cut through Lucy's lightning-quick magic. In the original lore, Lucy is supposed to be so surprised that her spell was blocked as Taylor closed the distance that she reflexively hits him with an intermediate-level lightning strike, completely overpowering Taylor, but getting herself disqualified for using restricted magic, which earns Taylor the honor of being the first to defeat her. Ed watches with bated breath as the match starts, and Taylor charges in screaming that he is going for it, looking exactly like the legendary underdog who never gives up hope despite being an unacknowledged failure. But bro, everything goes horribly wrong, because instead of casting lightning magic like she is supposed to, Lucy just yawns and unleashes a massive, devastating tornado of wind magic. The visual shows Taylor getting absolutely obliterated and blasted out of the arena in an instant by the swirling green vortex, leaving crowds staring in complete shock with his jaw dropped. We get to understand that Taylor McClure's life has basically been one massive series of trials. He is known around the academy as just a country bumpkin and a total failure of a student. He is the ultimate underachiever who hasn't managed to pull a single decent grade since he started school. He is seen as a complete failure, totally unacknowledged by anyone around him, while everyone in the crowd completely jumps to conclusions about the match, looking down on him in an outright wicked situation fueled by pure pity. But bro, even in the midst of all this heavy despair, Taylor never loses hope as he pushes himself back to his feet, totally ready for another round. Watching this, Ed gets super hyped and silently roots for the guy with a massive grin on his face. Then comes the exact moment Ed has been waiting for. Taylor charges forward with a massive shout of determination, proving he is the kind of swordsman who absolutely never gives up on his life until the bitter end. This epic display of grit is the exact moment that deeply touches the hearts of every single student watching. A wide, knowing smirk spreads across Ed's face because he is fully expecting that, right at this second, Lucy is going to accidentally fire off her restricted lightning magic. But man, to his absolute surprise, Lucy doesn't use lightning magic at all. She actually unleashes a crazy blast of wind magic. In a flash, Taylor gets completely blown right off the stage by the massive vortex. The announcer calls it, and Lucy takes the absolute win. Taylor is officially defeated, totally wrecking his legendary moment. Meanwhile, Ed is just left standing there, staring at the whole scene in total mind-blown confusion. So right after Lucy wins, the announcer yells out, "Victor, Lucy Merrill." Ed is absolutely stressing, looking at Taylor knocked out on the ground and thinking, "Taylor? Lost?" Knowing this is a massive problem, he immediately pivots and power walks away, realizing they definitely can't leave Taylor alone. Suddenly, Marilda, this giant high-class wind spirit wolf, appears, giving off this continuous magic called Protection of the Wind, which automatically protects the user from sudden attacks. Lucy just casually zooms past Ed like a blur, demanding her beef jerky now. Ed realizes that in the original scenario, Marilda and Lucy were totally separate entities. But because Lucy came to his side for food, he ended up contracting with Marilda and getting way stronger because of it. Before he can even process that, the intercom blares that the next combat training will be between Ed Rothstaylor and the respected Princess Fenia alias Clole. Ed sprints through the halls in a total panic, knowing Taylor had to win that last match. He was supposed to pick up his sword and gain confidence, but instead, he lost because of Ed and the very existence of Ed Rothstaylor in Silvenia. Ed bursts through some doors and spots Taylor sulking away, so he yells out, "Hey Taylor!" Figuring that doing something is better than nothing, Ed jumps down the stairs and hits this ridiculous pose, hyping him up by saying his efforts will definitely pay off, and not to feel so down, because there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Ed is sweating internally, because if Taylor's heart is completely broken, there is a high chance Ed will be forced to work hard to save the world himself. So he keeps shouting for Taylor to walk proudly because he did good. It's just that the opponent wasn't a good match for him, and to not let something like this get him down. Ed tells him there will be many more hardships that'll happen at the academy, silently praying that Taylor will be the one to face it, and not him. The story then shifts to a flashback showing Emperor Clole, who was the first to discover Princess Fenia's innate insight. It wasn't some God-given blessing, but an ability she developed herself as a means of self-protection to detect opponents' lies and conspiracies, since royal life is just an endless abyss of intrigue. Because of that, Princess Fionia is totally confident in her ability to see through people, even though she always acted like the clueless princess of love. Cut back to the present, Ed is in the arena bowing and asking the princess to please go easy on him, and she replies, "Yes, please go easy on me as well," while staring straight through him. The crowd is super toxic, whispering about how persistent Ed is for yelling at Taylor earlier, guessing he just wanted to look like a nice guy while making fun of someone who couldn't do anything. They call him disturbing and say he was always that type of person, remembering how he used his position to embarrass juniors and even altered test results. Fenia agrees with their words, knowing he used to be like that, but she's confused because she remembers his desperation when cheering for Taylor, realizing that his encouragement was actually real. The announcer yells for the combat to begin, and Fenia, wanting to figure this guy out, declares she's coming and fires a massive blast of water. She expects an epic dramatic battle where he counters with wind and fire, hoping to get this mysterious man out of her head. But nope, Ed just stands there, gets completely blasted off his feet, hits the ground, and instantly surrenders, saying he lost. Fenia is completely dumbfounded, stammering out, "What did you say?" The crowd absolutely loses it, laughing their heads off because he didn't even try to block the water ball's trajectory, mocking him for acting cool, but getting knocked out in one hit, saying he's even worse than Taylor. A fanboy screams that Fenia was so cool and refreshing. Ed just brushes himself off, says that was a good fight, and he learned a lot, and starts walking away. Fenia is stunned, realizing that since stepping on stage, he hasn't made eye contact with her even once, meaning he never had any interest in this duel in the first place. The announcer crowns Princess Fionia alias Clole the victor, while Ed internally rationalizes that he can't be playing Duel right now. He knows he has to act carefully around her so he doesn't mess up the scenario, especially since the actual main character, Tally, is way more important right now. Ed is looking everywhere for Tally when suddenly the princess calls out his name from behind. Ed is shocked to see her without escorts, but she just gets all up in his face, screaming, "Just what are you?" Ed tries to play dumb about learning a lot from the duel, but she snaps back that he didn't even intend to win and just wanted to quickly get off the stage. Ed starts stressing out, thinking about how hard class is, the merchant trying to take over the school, Professor Glass's bad attitude, and the annoying royal servants, wondering why she has so much pent-up frustration and why she's making his life even more complicated. He just grabs her shoulders and tells her to take a deep breath and calm down, because there's no need to get so worked up. She actually breathes in and out, calming down enough to ask what just happened. Ed awkwardly tells her to please forget about it and asks if he can go now. She admits she has a bad habit of constantly trying to guess people's thoughts due to palace life, so instead, she's just going to ask bluntly. While Ed is crying on the inside, begging to just let him go find Taylor, she points right at him and accuses him of picking on Taylor just so he could get expelled and cut ties with his family. Ed thinks her deduction is sharp, but mostly wrong, though she's right about his family having a dark side. He tells her he doesn't know what she's talking about, knowing it's too early for her to look into that plotline. She gets mad, saying it doesn't make logical sense for him to cheer for someone he wanted expelled unless he never disliked Taylor in the first place. Ed lies through his teeth, saying he just wanted to make fun of him, thinking maybe if he cheered Taylor on, people would see him in a different light. Fenia yells that anyone can tell he's lying and uses her insight ability to look into his eyes. All she sees are giant red boxes saying lie flashing everywhere, even as Ed desperately insists he's telling the truth. He knows going with the original scenario is his only hope, and since she doesn't have actual evidence, she finally sighs and tells him he can go, noting he's been staring at the door since the start, like he has something urgent to do. He says thank you and starts to leave. Fenia realizes this is the first time she's shown this messy side of herself, already getting a headache from being so involved with him. Ed feels kind of bad, knowing his burdens are nothing compared to hers. He turns back and tells her it might be out of line, but she looks really worn out. And while politics are important, this is Silvenia Academy, not the palace, so she doesn't have to worry about every little thing and should relax a bit. Fenia is left completely stunned, realizing that after a lifetime of seeing through everyone's lies, this is the first time someone else saw right through her. Ed starts sprinting down the halls again, panting and thinking it's so troublesome that he lost so much time, because if Taylor gives up, his comfortable life and the whole world might end. He finally spots Taylor and shouts his name, but suddenly a girl jumps out in front of Taylor to protect him. She glares at Ed and tells him no more. Don't bother Taylor anymore, revealing herself as the main heroine, Tris. Ed just looks on in this wild mix of shock and relief. Ed sees the crazy fighting spirit in Taylor that never falters, no matter how strong his opponent is, completely recognizing the clear willpower evident in his eyes as Taylor steps right past Ayla. Ed internally confirms this makes sense, recalling how while he originally dueled with Princess Fenia, Taylor's childhood friend and biggest cheerleader, Tris, had run out the door right away without a single glance back. We even see a quick flashback of Ayla comforting a totally beaten Taylor, telling him he can get through it this time too because he's always been great at that, and hyping him up not to be discouraged by this. Back in the hallway, Taylor demands to know why Ed is here and if he has any business with him, which just makes Ed realize that with Ayla by his side, Taylor will rise to his feet again and again. Turning his back, Ed thinks about how he's seen through lots of experiences with Taylor and been with him till the end, but admits he doesn't have anything like that himself. As Ed walks away, he's basically like, let's be honest, he thought Taylor would save the world, so he should just worry about surviving. Ed totally confesses he treated Taylor like a pushover since he was the game's protagonist who'd do all the hard work instead of him, but right now, he's just relieved. He cracks a smile, realizing his relief isn't because the story that strayed away from the original came back on track, but simply because Taylor, whom he was with for so long, is still okay, and that's all he needs. Ayla watches him walk off totally baffled, wondering what the hell is wrong with him and why he's acting like he's so cool. Fast forward a bit, and Ed is standing in front of these massive arena doors, bracing himself because he knows he can't avoid this. When he pushes them open, a gigantic fire dragon named Tarkin is just blasting flames everywhere, making Ed wonder if it's that time already, since originally, everyone was supposed to have witnessed this while in their seats at the nail building. Amidst all the crazy fire, Ed spots the Golden Daughter, Lortel, and the Spirit Sorcerer, Janica Failover, going at it in a sparring match. Even though the whole thing is happening in a different form from the original storyline, Ed is dead sure Taylor and Ayla are watching this scene, and he internally warns Taylor to keep his eyes peeled. Ed knows this is a huge deal, because one of the numerous trials approaching Taylor is the Act 1 final boss, Janica Failover. Then the scene cuts to Janica being absolutely swarmed by an adoring crowd, cheering her on, yelling congrats, because Janica is the only one from their year who won against the new students. Her classmates are hyping up her great personality and how she's great at spirit sorcery, joking about what she's even bad at, while Janica bashfully gives her thanks. Even when medical staff rush an injured Lortel by, shouting for everyone to move aside, the crowd keeps fawning over her, asking how she gets her spirit sorcery to be so crazy and calling her the pride of the sophomores. Chilling on a balcony overlooking the madness, Ed notes that unlike in the original plot, Lucy defeated Taylor, and it all ended with the main character of the joint combat training being Janica Failover, who became the protector of the pride of the past enrolled students. Ed figures Janica already had a lot of friends, but this incident will make things even more frantic for her, though he shrugs it off, thinking it might just be for the better. Turning away into the dark, Ed decides he won't be seeing her at the camp anymore, since getting entangled with the main characters makes his head start spinning. 2 weeks roll by since the joint combat training, and out under the night sky at his camp, Ed is stoked that without the main characters around, he can go all in on his studies and survival without worry. He looks at his new fishing net, deciding the food problem is somewhat solved, and checks his stats, seeing his stamina is at 6, intellect at 5, talent at 9, willpower at 8, and luck at 6, along with his combat magic and life alchemy skills. While he's standing waist deep in the freezing stream in just his striped boxers, Ed wonders if his body is getting better, because his stamina stats are increasing, but tells himself it's still too early to get lazy. Out of nowhere, Janica pops out of the bushes, covering her face but totally peeking through her fingers, asking if Ed likes being naked. Ed screams, asking what the hell she is talking about after suddenly showing up there, and frantically explains as he throws on his shirt by the campfire that he just came from fishing. Totally exasperated, Ed asks what's so great about this place that she keeps coming back, and Janica, sitting by the fire, says it's like a top-secret base where she feels like an adventurer, and that's exciting. She shyly admits she wants to talk to him a little more and needs some advice, which leaves Ed completely lost, as he asks why she wants advice from him out of all people. Janica explains that since Ed left early at that time, he might not have seen it, but during the joint combat training last month, she hurt someone. Janica tries to justify it a bit by mentioning her opponent used an intermediate level spell, even though intermediate level magic wasn't allowed. Ed realizes that technicality wouldn't be important for the good-hearted Janica. Janica says she keeps trying to forget it, but thinks she did overdo it, and can't get rid of the thought that she overreacted. She asks if she should apologize to her, mentioning that her friends will try to stop her by saying the other girl did wrong first. Ed bluntly tells her to then do that if she thinks she's right. Ed knows that the lovely and bubbly second-year student Janica was a treasure to everyone, precious in every way, so if she ever felt guilty or self-critical, everyone would naturally come forward to encourage her and take her side. But Janica knew that while it's nice when someone has your back no matter what, that doesn't erase the wrongs that were done, which is probably exactly why she came to him. Janica breaks into a huge smile and says that, as expected of Ed, he never takes her side unconditionally. Ed coldly replies he can't help it if that offends her, causing Janica to wave her hands defensively, saying he's misunderstanding, and that she doesn't feel offended at all. Ed thinks about how this cold attitude wasn't the type of guy he was last year, and notes that Janica, despite being the bubbly, smiley girl, was just as observant as the next person. She noticed that even when Ed asked for money during hard times, he didn't show the desperation that people usually have in such a predicament, and his intensely muscular physique silently warned her that this boy was indirectly telling her not to come close. Surprisingly, though, Janica finds those sides of Ed reassuring, wishing everyone in the world was like him, because his blunt honesty stayed with her as a strange comfort. The peaceful vibes get completely wrecked the next day on campus when Ed is sweating bullets, thinking to himself that this is serious trouble. He goes into this deep internal monologue about how the game, The Failed Swordsman of Silvenia, is called a masterpiece. But very few people have seen its ending because newbies especially encounter several bad endings early on. For example, if you save a girl during an ambush by kobolds in the class placement test, you will witness the secret of the Golden Daughter, who then sends someone to kidnap Taylor, and just like that, you hit bad ending 3 where Taylor has been assassinated. Then, there's bad ending 7 where Ayla has fallen off a cliff to her death because Taylor was supposed to rescue her. And if you protect the Golden Daughter from the fire spirit Tarkin, summoned by Janica, you get another bad ending 3 where Taylor has burned to death. All this paranoia becomes real when a red-haired girl walks up right behind Ed, asking if he cannot hear her, while Ed is internally screaming that he must run. She demands to know how long he is going to keep following her, stating she didn't think he'd grit his teeth and ignore her for so long, and Ed nervously fires back that of course he's going to grit his teeth and ignore her, asking if that isn't obvious. Ed mentally introduces her as the game's 4th heroine and the business magnate Elte Ketcheln's only daughter, Lortel Ketcheln, the Golden Daughter. Lortel just flashes this super cunning smile and tells Ed she'd like to buy 2 hours of his. Lortel Ketcheln, known as the Golden Daughter, approaches Ed and telling him she would like to buy 2 hours of his time as Senior Ed. Ed narrates that Lortel is actually designated as the hidden hero of the game, because unlike Fenia, who everyone loved, Lortel was treated as a villain from the very start, and her true colors were only revealed in the later half of the story. The moment players began to truly understand the realist Lortel's loneliness and anguish, they found themselves at a crossroads between choosing Fenia and Lortel. Instead of entertaining her tempting offer, Ed totally ignores her and walks away, admitting to himself that if he had gotten that gold, it might have made things easier for him. However, he thinks it is a shame, but he cannot even imagine the horrors he would go through if he had gotten stuck between the newbie crusher and Janica. So he decides he has to avoid anything that increases the chances of a change in the original storyline at all costs. Later that night, Lortel didn't feel humiliated by his rejection because, understanding the pros and cons, profit and self-interest, the perfect businessman doesn't lose any opportunity that comes within their reach. Meanwhile, Lortel runs into Janica out in the moonlight and tells her she didn't expect to see her there, noting that she looks pretty different with her hair down. This encounter awakened the unrelenting spirit within Lortel to turn Janica Failover into one of her people. Lortel smoothly brings up how there was a big fuss about her using forbidden intermediate magic during the joint combat exercise, and says she wanted to apologize when she got the chance, because she just wanted to see how great the top sophomore student was. Janica notices the bandages and notes that the wound hasn't healed yet, adding she had to pay a big price for it. Lortel tells Senior Janica that she is sure it will heal quickly and not to worry about it too much. Internally, Lortel schemes, thinking Janica is similar to the main characters in fairy tales and wondering if it would be easier to manipulate her if she used her guilt against her. Then, Janica slyly asks if the talk with Ed went well, causing Janica to panic and ask what she is suddenly talking about. Smiling, Lortel explains she tells the spirits to restrain themselves when it comes to personal matters, but that the spirits sure love chatting, and she hears most of the conversations around the northern part of the forest, which makes Lortel realize Janica knows everything. Lortel holds up some gold coins and asks if she can help Janica befriend Senior Ed, noting she is willing to invest gold coins for her. Janica says she is touched, but everyone knows you can't buy sincerity with money, adding that Ed's approach is a bit more moving. Seeing this, Janica wonders if she acted too smug, while blushing, and admits it is her first time being a senior, so she might have boasted a little, which is super embarrassing. Lortel realizes she needs to modify her evaluation. Lortel. Dropping the act, Janica says she is sorry about the other day because Lortel was pretty hurt because of her and hopes she gets better soon. As Janica leaves, Lortel thinks about how despite being completely aware of the dark side of the world, Janica maintains her cheerful personality. Grabbing her head, Lortel mutters that this is hard, recalling that Janica strangely looked on the edge just a moment ago. Finally alone in her room, a stressed Janica tells herself she gotta work harder because it's really nice when people expect good things from you. The next day, Ed is hanging his laundry outside when someone suddenly says it smells. A massive gust of wind blows everything away, making Ed fall over and yell out that he just hung them and asking who is there. He looks up and sees it's Belle Maya, the senior maid of Silvenia's finest dormitory, Theophilus Hall, and notes she is the exact maid who kicked him out. Belle casually mentions she knows he is staying here, and that Lady Janica talks a lot about him, adding she didn't realize he was living in this state, but is glad to see it's been a good change for him. Belle's words fall on deaf ears, though, because Ed's gaze keeps going to her woven basket. He explains that Theophilus Hall's maids are an elite group who perform all household chores to perfection, including feeding the students, so inside that basket must be the finest ingredients this elite maid gathered from the forest. Ed realizes this is high-grade info on foraging that he can't get from books, and tries to think where Belle Maya could impact the main plot. Belle tells him he doesn't need to be so respectful and can talk down to her as he had while residing in Ophelis. But Ed quickly says no thanks, thinking how could he talk down to a maid who's always working so hard. Concluding there isn't a single event where Belle Maya had a direct impact on the main plot, he figures there shouldn't be a problem with them as extras becoming friends. Ed eagerly listens to her explanation of various edible berries, mushrooms, and herbs. Later, a system window pops up saying his creation is complete and his crafting proficiency has increased. He successfully built a fish farming net installation, having tied the net properly and secured it to a branch so it won't collapse in the flowing stream, meaning his catch might survive for a few days. Ed is totally hyped because he now has plenty of meat and fish, so his dietary needs are almost solved. He casts Fire Magic Ignition level 10 to start a fire under a pot, and uses Wind Magic Windblade level 10 to fan the flames. He notes he still only has 2 basic spells, but he used them so many damn times that he reached his aimed proficiency of level 10 without even knowing. The system confirms a newly finished product, and herbal tea made from the herbs Belle Maya told him smells good, and notes that using it while chopping firewood or cooking increases his survival rate drastically. Sitting back with his fancy cup, Ed watches the sunset and thinks to himself that if he's honest, he has to admit he's having a bit of fun with this. But that peaceful vibe lasts right up until now, as a gigantic star-shaped flash suddenly erupts in the sky above him. A massive explosion completely wrecks his camp, sending Ed flying, eating dirt as he groans in pain. He coughs in the smoke, crying out for his precious camp, and realizing the blast just about killed him. As the dust settles, a white-haired girl is sitting right in the middle of the crater, making Ed scream out Lucy's name in total shock. Ed is totally baffled, thinking to himself how she is literally the world's most powerful mage, and wondering who could have possibly wrecked her like this. Lucy calmly explains that Belle Maya did it, and Ed is left wondering how Belle could have pulled this off because she's supposed to be a good person. Lucy goes on to mention that she just ditched class as she usually does, but Belle was acting kind of moody for some reason, describing how Belle came at her with her fist clenched way tighter than usual because it was all so sudden Lucy just teleported out of there. She breathes a huge sigh of relief because she honestly thought it would really hurt. Ed tries to get her attention, but Lucy totally ignores the guy, looking up at the sky and whining for Miss Maya while casually asking if anyone has jerky. Ed completely loses his cool, screaming that she ruined everything before demanding to know what kind of chaotic life she lives. He smacks her head, making her yelp in pain, which suddenly makes Ed realize something crazy. He notices out loud that she isn't using any protective spells at all. Lucy, looking confused and rubbing her head, casually admits that she completely ran out of all her magic. Seeing his golden opportunity, Ed asks if she really did, and then he viciously pinches her cheek, telling her that the punishment is for the house she just destroyed. Later, as the sun sets over the grand architecture of Awfulus Hall, Ed notes that his situation is basically the fault of the oh-so-motherly Miss Maya, realizing he needs a sturdier house, and decides to build one out of real wood. He figures that with his life as busy as it is, it's a huge plus to gain all the knowledge he wants during his visits to the library. So sitting on the floor, surrounded by tall bookshelves, Ed reads a book and mentally lists that he needs materials for planning and other necessities, guessing that all that is left is figuring out the method of smoothing the wood and finishing the roof. Just then, a voice announces that it's closing time. A cute girl with pink pigtails walks up and comments on how he is studying really hard, making Ed look up, surprised that it has already been that long, and he apologizes for losing track of time. The girl reassures him that it is okay, and says that seeing someone like him study so diligently really boosts her motivation to study as well, while an info box reveals she is Elka Island from the Faculty of Magic, Year 1, and she introduces herself by name. Elka then stares at him with bright, pleading eyes, silently begging for his name, and Ed reads her expression perfectly, noting she is using her eyes to plead with him to tell her who he is. He introduces himself simply as Ed, then gives his full name, Ed Rothstaylor. Elka gasps in shock, which Ed immediately recognizes as the familiar reaction to his terrible reputation, sighing that his notoriety just doesn't go away, and tells her there is no surprise there, explaining that he has only been living diligently, but there is no way that changes anything. Before he can finish, Elka interrupts, telling him that he is extremely different from what the rumors say. She points out that he has read all the books on elemental studies, noting that they are hard for her to understand even given a few days, and adds that even right now, he has read through over 6 technical texts while just sitting there. Elka mentions that people say he acts all arrogant when they do not even know anything, concluding that she guesses rumors are not to be trusted after all, and smiling warmly, she tells him that she knows someone who is just as sincere as him, calling him Senior. She promises that she will be cheering for him. Ed looks away, slightly embarrassed, and mutters a quick thanks. Elka playfully waves goodbye, telling him to have a safe trip back, while Ed mentions he is going to clean up and head back to his dorm. But as soon as Ed turns away, a weird blue magical glow flashes in Elka's eye. This causes Elka to gasp in shock, asking what this is, as books suddenly start violently flying off the shelves all around her. A colossal pillar of purple magic shoots into the night sky over a massive building. We see shadowy figures floating in a magical barrier surrounded by muscular, shadowy wolf monsters, and the narration states that thanks to the main character, Taylor, and his friends' efforts, many students gathered at the camp. The narration notes that it has been 2 hours since the unprecedented disaster, while Ayla looks up at the sky in horror, telling Taylor she saw it in a book on spirit magic. She identifies the massive magical circle as a summoning rune. Ayla nervously declares that it is bad news because there is only one person with a high enough spirit connection level to summon that many spirits, concluding that it is highly likely their enemy is the one who went berserk due to the spirit of darkness, specifically the Year 2 top student. The image shifts to a menacing silhouette of Janica Faylover covered in dark magical flames. Taylor McClure, a first year from the combat faculty, steps up, saying it is unfortunate, but this is not the time for this, warning that if Ayla is right, then the barrier around the students will merely buy some time, and if Glaskin is summoned, there will be more casualties, insisting they need to head inside the student center. Claire, captain of the Royal Guard, argues that people outside the barrier will notice in no time, and if the Imperial Guard and the professors deal with it, it will soon be handled. Elvira Aniston, a first-year alchemy student known as the Meddler, interjects, explaining that if it is the spirit of darkness, its barrier must be tough, meaning they must solve this from the inside, since Principal Obel is out of town as well. Elvira suggests that if everyone there joins hands, she bets they could even take down a high-ranked spirit, asking if they do not think so. Isla shuts that down immediately, stating she is firmly against it. But Clelis Nortondale, a gloomy first-year combat student, drunkenly yells out that they will get through those intermediate-level spirits and subdue the spirit boss as well. Someone in the crowd panics, asking if they are actually going to enter the building and take down Janica. The panicking student screams that that is not all, pointing out that there are high-ranked spirits inside, specifically two of them, as massive, imposing figures of the high-rank berserk fire spirit, Tarkin, and the high-rank spirit of darkness, Philosopher, appear above the dark forces. Another student screams that it is suicide and outright refuses to go. Someone else questions if Janica really did this all on her own, wondering if she is way too powerful even for a year 2 top student, while Ayla explains to the group that she is summoning Glasskin while manifesting all these spirits at the same time. Ayla clarifies that most of it is likely Philosopher's power, and Senior Janica is merely a medium to manifest it. She elaborates that spirits of darkness are natural enemies of a spirit sorcerer, and their enormous power is simply beyond a spirit sorcerer's control. Ayla details how the demons that in fact take control of the spirit sorcerers are the reason all spirit sorcerers feel this way, because they become their prey. She notes the mystery, wondering how Senior Janica, the most remarkable student in spirit studies, managed to command Velocifere, since it is not known to anyone. Taylor steps in, declaring that is not what is important right now, emphasizing that what is important right now is to decide their course of action, and he looks to Princess Fenia, stating that there is only one person who can decide that. He asks the princess to please tell them what to do. Everyone waits for her decision as Fenia swallows nervously. Suddenly, Ed's nonchalant remark from earlier flashes through her mind, and she remembers him telling her that whatever burden he carries, it cannot be any heavier than what she carries, asking why not have some peace of mind. She thinks to herself how great it would be if only it were that easy, and finding her resolve, Fenia commands the group, announcing they will enter after an hour. But she specifies that only she, her guard Claire, as well as top students of each year in class will go, insisting that only those who have proven their ability will go, and ordering them to make their preparations and toughen their minds, because she will take the responsibility. Just then, a student rushes up to the princess, reporting that they are done assessing the resident employees of the teaching area. The student tells the group that the Audrey Hall and Potion Archives are in the middle of a strike, making it unlikely they will join them. The student concludes that they are the only ones who can take any proper action, adding that there are no other students aside from them. Out of nowhere, Alad bursts in, shouting that there is one more student, explaining she is on her way from the library, frantically informing the group that in the student library, there is a friend of hers, an apprentice librarian, and a sophomore student in there, which prompts Fenia to ask about the apprentice and demand to know their name. Elad shouts that it is Elka Island. This immediately triggers Jix, a large, intimidating student who steps forward demanding if she just said Elka, while Elad stammers, confirming they are in the apprentice librarian class together. Elad stresses that Elka is powerless to defend herself. A boy tries to calm Jix down, reminding him that the student library is really far away, and that subduing the cause of this problem, Senior Janica, comes first right now, and a girl backs him up, pointing out that Elad also said there is a sophomore student in the student library, suggesting they have faith in that student for now. Jix aggressively grunts, turning to Elad and demanding she confirm there is another student there. Elad is terrified, crying as Jix yells at her to stop hiding things and tell him right now. She breaks down, whispering the name Ed. This causes a dark shadow to fall over Jix's face. She cries and apologizes, saying he was sitting there all the way until really late in the night, and because she was annoyed, she just left it to Elka, crying out that all of them know what kind of guy he is. She defends herself by saying Elka does not care about rumors like that. Jix is furious, cursing that the shameless guy and the apprentice are stuck in the library all alone. Jix turns to leave, prompting Fenia to yell for him to wait a minute, begging him to have some faith in Ed. Her plea falls on deaf ears as Jix erupts into a massive purple aura, launching himself into the sky with an explosive roar, blasting away like a rocket. Jix furiously vows that if Ed touches so much as a hair of Elka's, he is going to beat him to a pulp.